Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask Megan. I appreciate you guys being here. And the question that I'm going to answer today is one that I was asked after our last book club meeting. And the question was, what are the books that you have read over the course of your career that have influenced you the most? And it was really, really hard, quite frankly, to narrow it down to a small list. But I managed to identify um, four today that I'm going to share with you that have really had an impact and truly a lasting impact on me that I think could also benefit a lot of you. So, the first book I'm going to start with is a book I don't actually own anymore. And it's a book called What Color is Your Parachute? Some of you maybe will familiar with it, some of you won't be. I heard about this book and got this book at the advice of one of my managers very early in my career. And it's a book, it's republished every year, and it's about kind of two things. One is how to find a job. There was a lot of wisdom in there about how most people go about trying to find a job versus how people actually get jobs and how hiring managers prefer to get jobs. I'm sure that's been updated since then. But the other piece of it was the part that was really profound for me, which was a way to think about what you love to do, what you're really good at, and the environment in which you love to do it. So I was early in my career and the writing was on the wall. I kind of knew that I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted to do um, in the company I was in because it just wasn't that people in that part of the business, quite frankly, were being laid off. So my boss recommended that I get this book to try to understand and think about what other options could you pursue and how can you know what you're truly going to enjoy and going to be happy doing. And there's this exercise that they have you do in the book called the flower exercise. And it's basically a bunch of concentric circles that look at the kind of work you love to do, the kind of people you like to work with, the kind of environment you like to work in, the kind of place you want to live or enjoy living. And so I put all of that together. And it's funny, I still have it. And when I go back and look at it now, it is almost creepy how accurate it still is. And I think it gave me a language for thinking in a very sort of 50,000 foot view about the nature of the work and the nature of the environment that I thrive in most. So that I could then go look around and look at different things. It was that made me even think about applying to be a Forrester analyst because that job had so much of what I really felt was going to be the best place for me to have an impact and feel good about it. And then as I moved into private practice, it shaped how I thought about, well, what do I want my practice to be? Where do I want to focus? So I think it's still in print. What Color is Your Parachute? I used to say that every high school or college student should probably read it, should be recommended reading. If any of you have had experience with this book, but in terms of books that have changed me, that was one that really helped me tap into and identify who I am and my personal preferences and passions in a way that is still valid 25 plus years later. So that's the first one. What Color is Your Parachute? I would hold it up, but I don't own it anymore. The second book is a book that Sam Stern, one of my former Forrester colleagues, introduced me to, and it's one that I know a lot of you have read. It's Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. The subtitle of this book is How to Change When Change is Hard. And Switch was profoundly impactful for me because it made me recognize that all of the things that I thought were the barriers to change in organizations, that the actual barrier wasn't what I thought it was. And the Heath brothers have three sort of guiding statements in the book. that have informed, if you've heard me give a speech in the last 20 years, you may have heard references to these. The first one was what looks like resistance is often a lack of clarity. So the idea that people may not be resisting change, they may not just really have any idea what you're asking them to change to. That is profoundly true in customer experience. And that realization led me to want to build the maturity model. It led me to really focus on how do we talk about and explain what customer experience management is about and what we're trying to do. And there have been a lot of situations where simply by giving people a way to think and talk about customer experience that made sense to them, it opened the floodgates for change much more than kind of pushing and persuading, trying to persuade whatever actually have done. The second statement in that book is what looks like laziness is often exhaustion. Also true in life, really got me to recognize that the people that we are asking to make changes already have full-time jobs, and very often those full-time jobs are more than they can handle. And so being very conscious and thinking about how we go about asking them to change, what we ask them to do, how we can make it easier, how we can take away some of the emotional effort, aka fear. If people are afraid of trying something new, just really recognizing that it is not necessarily a shortcoming in people. It's a reality that they only have a certain amount of energy to give. And doing anything new, even if it's something they think would benefit them and the company, is a lot of work. And the more we can help them, the better. And then the last principle in Switch is what looks like a people problem is often a situation problem. And that inspired me to think about, can I change the situation to make it easier for people to do something different? So it could be injecting something into a process that takes advantage of meetings that are already happening. It could be putting things in front of people on a regular basis so they, get used to seeing them, and they're reminded of things that they should think about and focus on. There are a lot of examples, but it really fundamentally changed how I thought about and the advice I gave people about how to drive change related to customer experience based on the reality of what hinders change, and that reality was nothing like I thought it was once I went ahead and read Switch. So book number three. Book number three is from Gretchen Rubin, who many of you may know. She wrote The Happiness Project, and this was actually her second book after that, called Better Than Before. Mastering the Habits of Our Everyday Lives. And there's one framework in this book in particular, and she wrote a whole other book about that framework called The Four Tendencies. But this framework explains why it can be hard to change habits that used to be easy for you to have or build. And it's the concept of how a person responds to internal and external expectations. So if you are trying to form a habit and you make a commitment to yourself, some people, commitments to themselves are sacred. They will absolutely keep them. Other people, making a commitment to someone else outside is much more likely that they'll follow through than a commitment they made to themselves. And this kind of 2x2 leads to 4 different profiles of folks in terms of what shapes their behavior. Upholders are people who feel very compelled to meet both commitments they make to others and commitments they make to themselves. Obligers are people who are very inclined to meet commitments that they make to other people, but not so much to themselves. I'm an obliger, by the way. Questioners are people who don't care as much about meeting commitments or doing things that other people want them to do. But if they make a commitment to themselves, that is sacrosanct. And rebels just resist all kind of commitments in general. But this was really transformative for me, this framework in two areas. Number one, recognizing that I'm an obliger changed the way I approach building habits. I have a coach. I have someone who works with me in operations. And having those people, I am much more likely to stick to self-imposed deadlines because those people are holding me accountable. And this is true in, I have a personal trainer and other things, just because that external expectation is something that I will work harder to fill than if I just make a promise to myself. But that framework also helped me in my work with clients because it helped me recognize different patterns of response to requests to change, response to behavior, and how people, what makes people more or less likely to do something that someone else wants them to do. So as I work with folks on trying to drive change, I don't talk about this framework as much explicitly, but in the back of my mind, I'm very often thinking about, is this person we're trying to influence? Which of these four categories do they fit into? And how do we position the thing that we want them to do so that it's something that they will feel compelled to do based on their style of response to commitments and expectations? So that was Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin. Book number 4 is one that we did read in the book club just a couple months or a month or two ago. And it's called Practical Wisdom by Barry Schwartz and Ken Sharp. Barry Schwartz, if the name sounds familiar, he is the author of The Paradox of Choice. And Practical Wisdom is a book about hard decisions and the value of honing judgment and the ability to make hard decisions. So in the book, it was written right after the Great Recession. And so a lot of the setup is in response to that. But the basic premise is that we very rarely are asked to choose between a good option and a bad option. Most of the time, there are multiple good but competing or conflicting factors that we have to try to balance. And they give examples in medicine, right? A doctor has to be kind, but they also have to be honest. They give examples from the law and the judicial system. You want things to be fair, but you also want them to have a little bit of empathy. It's same thing they talk about teaching. And the concept of practical wisdom is the concept of being able to evaluate a situation in the moment and find the right balance between whatever the competing important factors are. And a big piece of the premise of the book is that you can't write a rule for that. And that we as a society have tried to become so structured and codified and rule-oriented, but that doesn't work because most of the really important things in life require judgment. They require wisdom, and in particular, that practical wisdom. And that concept really allowed me to put language to, we would talk a lot about empowerment and the need to empower employees. And I felt like the word empowerment was just too high level. There wasn't enough discussion about what that really meant. And frankly, what we had to do to give people what they needed to be successful when they were empowered. And it really is this concept of practical wisdom and giving people the space and the opportunity very deliberately to hone their judgment and hone their practical wisdom, which you can only do by making judgment calls and seeing how they turn out. So that book was powerful in the sense that it helped me give words to a concept that I think is very important and something that companies struggle with from a practical perspective in terms of empowering and giving authority to people. Also, how executives make decisions. How do you balance customer needs and business needs and employee needs, again, the answer there is it calls for practical wisdom and balance. And so that book, it's a little bit heavier on the academic and example side. There's also a TED Talk. Barry Schwartz did a TED Talk with the basic concept of practical wisdom. So if you're interested in that, but like me, have a book list that is taller than you are, and you want to go watch that TED Talk, that is something I definitely would recommend. And the fifth and final book that I'm going to talk about is by an author you probably have heard of, a gentleman by the name of Daniel Goleman. He is the one who wrote Emotional Intelligence, but he also wrote this book called Social Intelligence. This is another one that is a little bit heavy on the academic side. But what I love about this book is that it really focuses on relationships, because emotional intelligence and the need for emotional intelligence, as powerful as a concept as that is, your ability to succeed with that really depends on your ability to understand other people, their expectations, societal norms, the context around you. And it's rarely, emotional intelligence is rarely just between two people. It really is social intelligence. It's how to understand and manage emotions in groups and societies. And I've been I've been going back to this book, and you can see Doug earing it and adding more things to it recently, because I'm doing a lot of work on trust and how trust forms and how it erodes, and how relationships form and erode. Because I think ultimately that's the goal of customer experience. We want individual interactions that we have with people and customers to foster and promote strong relationships. So really understanding how relationships form and evolve, and how trust forms and evolves, the better we understand that, the better we can understand how we can do individual things in a given moment to help strengthen that relationship, or if we're not careful, erode it. So social intelligence is another one. Again, a little bit heavy on the nerdy side, a lot of research, but there are some really powerful concepts in this. I might actually even pull some things out from this and do another LinkedIn Live. Nobody's asked me the question yet, but just some of the key concepts around relationship dynamics and social intelligence. But those are 5 of the many, as you can see from the bookshelves behind me. And this is only a fraction. I have 2 more giant bookshelves at home. These are just the ones that came to the office with me. Those are some of the books that have really marked a turning point in how I think about things, and or given me a way to talk about things that I have found particularly constructive and useful, either in my personal life or in my professional life, and in most cases, both. So I'll review. What Color is Your Parachute was the first one. Switch was the second one. Sorry, I'm not very good at this Vanna White show and tell thing. Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin. Practical Wisdom by Barry Schwartz and Ken Sharp, and Social Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. I will also tell you that I do not have affiliate links. I do not make any money off the sales of any of these books. These are books that I found and read and that had a profound impact on me. If you think that they might help you, then by all means go check them out. If you want to learn more, if you want to have a discussion about some of the ideas in the books but don't have time to read the books, I get it. Feel free to ping me in messages, and I'm always happy to talk about the things and ideas and how I have used them. So those are, I'm going to say, the first 5 books, and what I have no doubt will be a series about books that changed me. There are 5 or 6 books that I'm in the process of reading. It's been kind of crazy over the last 2 or 3 months. Several of the people that I respect most have all come out with really powerful books that I'm working my way through. that I 100% know will end up on this list of books that have changed me. So I'll probably end up doing this kind of Q&A maybe once or twice a year as my reading repertoire evolves. But I know a lot of you have asked me through the years what books you recommend, what books have been powerful. So I hope that this has given you some inklings, some ideas of things you might want to buy or put onto your reading list, and probably more insight into me and my complete nerdiness. If you didn't already know how nerdy I am, you now have a sense of it in a way that you didn't before. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And I will be back next month with another episode of Ask Megan. Thanks.